The house was quiet, almost eerily so, save for the soft hum of the refrigerator in the kitchen. Emma sat on the couch, scrolling through her phone. Her bright blue eyes scanned post after post, but her mind wasn't truly focused on the endless stream of content. Something felt missing. It wasn't something she could easily put into words, but deep in her heart, Emma knew she was searching for a purpose greater than herself. A few months earlier, her life had been entirely different. Emma was a successful graphic designer living in a bustling city, enjoying her independence and career. But there was an emptiness she couldn't ignore, a nagging voice inside her that told her there had to be more to life than deadlines and promotions. One night, while browsing online, she stumbled upon an article about foster care and adoption. It was filled with startling statistics about children in need, especially children of color who were disproportionately overlooked by adoptive families. That article lingered in her mind for weeks. She couldn't stop thinking about the faces of the children in the photographs, smiling but with eyes that seemed to hold a lifetime of stories. Emma wasn't the kind of person to make impulsive decisions, but this time was different. Something inside her shifted. She began researching more about adoption, learning about the process, the challenges, and the impact it could have on a child's life. She attended workshops, met with social workers, and even joined online forums to hear first-hand accounts from adoptive parents. With each step, her conviction grew stronger. She wasn't just thinking about adoption anymore, she was preparing for it. But Emma's decision wasn't met with universal support. Friends and family questioned her choice. "Are you sure you're ready for this? You don't have children of your own. Do you even know what you're getting into?" they'd ask. Others hinted at the challenges of adopting children from a different racial background. "It's a noble idea, but won't it be too complicated? What if they don't feel like they belong?" Emma listened patiently but remained steadfast. She knew this wasn't about her comfort or others' opinions. It was about giving children a chance to feel loved, safe, and wanted. The day Emma was approved to become an adoptive parent was surreal. She sat in her car for what felt like hours, staring at the paperwork that made it official. It wasn't the end of her journey, it was just the beginning. Soon after, she was introduced to a sibling pair, Marcus, a curious and spirited 7-year-old, and his younger sister, Lily, who was 5 and had the most enchanting laugh Emma had ever heard. They had been through more in their short lives than many adults could imagine. Their story was one of resilience, but also of heartbreak. Emma knew instantly that they were meant to be a part of her life. The transition wasn't easy. Marcus was cautious, keeping his emotions guarded, while Lily clung to Emma as though afraid she might disappear. There were tears, misunderstandings, and moments of doubt. Emma questioned whether she was truly prepared for the weight of this responsibility. But there were also small victories, like the first time Marcus smiled genuinely at her, or when Lily called her mommy without hesitation. As Emma navigated the challenges of parenting, she began to experience a profound transformation herself. She learned about the deep complexities of racial identity, systemic inequalities, and the importance of creating an environment where her children felt proud of who they were. Emma sought out books, mentors, and community groups that could help her raise Marcus and Lily in a way that honored their heritage while ensuring they felt deeply loved and supported. But then something happened that Emma never saw coming. It was an ordinary Tuesday afternoon. She was helping Marcus with his homework while Lily played with her dolls nearby. The doorbell rang, and when Emma opened the door, a man stood there, a stranger who would change everything. His presence, his words, and the story he shared would unravel secrets Emma hadn't been prepared to face. And in that moment, Emma realized her journey was only just beginning. Emma froze in the doorway, her hand gripping the edge of the door as she studied the man standing before her. He looked to be in his late 40s, with weathered features that suggested a life of experience and hardship. His clothes were plain, a simple button-up shirt and jeans, but his posture carried an air of urgency. His dark eyes met Emma's, and for a moment, neither of them spoke. "Can I help you?" Emma finally asked, her voice cautious but polite. The man hesitated, glancing briefly at the house behind her. "Are you Emma Taylor?" he asked, his tone low and careful. Emma nodded, her heart beginning to race. She didn't recognize him, and the way he said her name made her uneasy, as though he knew more about her than she was comfortable with. "My name is Robert," he continued, his voice softening. "I don't mean to alarm you, but I think we need to talk. It's about Marcus and Lily." Emma's stomach dropped. The protective instinct she had developed for the children kicked in immediately. She stepped outside, pulling the door partially closed behind her. "What about them?" she asked, trying to keep her voice steady. Robert sighed, running a hand through his graying hair. "It's a long story, and I'm sure you weren't expecting this. But I knew their parents, well, their mother, to be specific. She was my sister." Emma blinked, the words taking a moment to sink in. "You're their uncle?" she asked, her mind racing with questions. The adoption agency had told her that Marcus and Lily had no immediate family willing or able to care for them. This man's sudden appearance didn't just feel unexpected, it felt impossible. Robert nodded. "I've been looking for them for months. I didn't even know they'd been placed for adoption until recently. He trailed off, his voice faltering. "I know this is a lot to take in, but I needed to see them. I needed to make sure they were okay." Emma's initial instinct was to protect Marcus and Lily from any potential disruption. They had already been through so much, bouncing between foster homes, losing their parents, and trying to adjust to a new life with her. The last thing they needed was more uncertainty. But as she looked at Robert, she saw something in his eyes that gave her pause, a mixture of sorrow and determination that felt genuine. "I don't know what to say," Emma admitted. "This is unexpected. I think we should sit down and talk about this, but I can't make any promises. My priority is making sure Marcus and Lily feel safe and secure." "Of course," Robert said quickly, nodding. "That's all I want too. I just want a chance to explain, to share what I know about their past. I think it's important, for them, and for you." Emma glanced back at the door, where she could hear the faint sound of Marcus and Lily's voices inside. She thought about the nights Marcus had woken up crying from nightmares, or the way Lily would sometimes stare off into the distance, clutching the small stuffed bear she had brought with her from her last foster home. There were pieces of their story that Emma didn't know, pieces they were too young or too scared to share. Maybe this man, if he was who he claimed to be, could fill in those gaps. "All right," Emma said finally, her voice firm. "But this has to be on my terms. I need to protect them." Robert nodded again, relief washing over his face. "Of course," he said. "I wouldn't expect anything less." Emma invited him in, though she felt a pang of anxiety as she did so. She led him to the living room, where Marcus and Lily were still engrossed in their activities. Marcus looked up first, his dark brown eyes narrowing slightly when he saw the stranger. Lily, ever curious, abandoned her dolls and walked over to Emma, wrapping her small arms around her waist. "Who's that?" Marcus asked, his tone cautious. "This is Robert," Emma said gently. "He knew your mom." Marcus's expression shifted, a mix of surprise and suspicion crossing his face. Lily tilted her head, looking up at Emma with wide eyes. "Our mommy?" she asked softly. "Yes," Robert said, stepping forward slightly but keeping his distance. "I'm your uncle. Your mom was my sister." There was a long, heavy silence. Marcus looked at Robert as though trying to decide whether to believe him, while Lily tightened her grip on Emma. Emma knelt down, placing a reassuring hand on both of their shoulders. "It's okay," she said softly. "We're just going to talk, all right? You can stay here with me." Marcus gave a small nod, though his expression remained guarded. Lily buried her face in Emma's side, but didn't protest. Emma guided them to the couch, keeping them close as Robert took a seat across from them. For the next hour, Robert shared his story. He spoke about his sister, the vibrant and loving woman who had been Marcus and Lily's mother. He talked about her struggles, her dreams, and the circumstances that had led to her passing. Emma listened intently, watching Marcus and Lily's reactions carefully. Marcus's eyes stayed fixed on Robert, his face a mix of emotions, curiosity, sadness, and a hint of hope. Lily, on the other hand, seemed overwhelmed, her small hand clutching Emma's tightly. But as Robert spoke, Emma began to sense that there was more he wasn't saying. His pauses grew longer, and there was a flicker of hesitation in his voice that made her wonder what he was holding back. When he finally finished, the room fell silent, the weight of his words settling over them like a heavy blanket. "I know this is a lot to take in," Robert said finally, his voice quiet. "I don't want to cause any trouble. I wanted to see them, to make sure they're okay. And if you'll let me, I'd like to be a part of their lives." Emma's mind raced. She wanted to believe Robert's intentions were pure, but she couldn't ignore the sense of unease that had been growing in her chest. There was something he wasn't telling her, something that felt important, and until she knew what it was, she wasn't sure she'd fully trust him. "We'll need some time to think about this," Emma said carefully. "This is all very new, and I want to make sure it's the right decision for Marcus and Lily." "Of course," Robert said, standing up. "Take all the time you need. I'll leave my number with you. If you have any questions, or if the kids want to talk, I'm here." Emma walked him to the door, her thoughts swirling with uncertainty. As he stepped outside, he turned back to her, his expression serious. "Emma," he said quietly, "there's more to this story than you know. When you're ready, I'll tell you everything." And with that, he was gone, leaving Emma standing in the doorway, the weight of his words hanging heavy in the air. She closed the door slowly, turning back to find Marcus and Lily watching her with wide, questioning eyes. Whatever was coming next, Emma knew it would change everything. That night, Emma couldn't sleep. She lay awake in the quiet of her room, the conversation with Robert replaying in her mind over and over. His words had seemed genuine, but the way he hesitated, the way he left things unfinished, it gnawed at her. What could he possibly mean by "there's more to this story than you know"? What was he holding back? And why now? Why come looking for Marcus and Lily after so much time had passed? She turned onto her side and glanced at the baby monitor sitting on her nightstand. Marcus and Lily were fast asleep in their rooms, their steady breathing a small comfort in the midst of her racing thoughts. She couldn't shake the feeling that Robert's arrival wasn't just a coincidence. There was something more going on, and Emma needed to figure out what it was. The next morning, Marcus was unusually quiet at breakfast. He poked at his cereal, his eyes distant, and Emma could tell his mind was elsewhere. Lily, on the other hand, was her usual bubbly self, humming a tune as she carefully arranged her fruit slices into a smiley face on her plate. Emma decided to give Marcus some space, knowing he would open up when he was ready. But the sight of him like that, withdrawn and contemplative, made her heart ache. After dropping the kids off at school, Emma found herself sitting in her car in the parking lot, staring at Robert's number written on a scrap of paper. She had promised herself she wouldn't call him until she had more time to think, but her curiosity and concern were too strong to ignore. Before she could second-guess herself, she dialed the number. Robert answered on the second ring. "Emma," he said, his voice calm but tinged with surprise. "I didn't expect to hear from you so soon." "I need answers," Emma said, getting straight to the point. "You said there's more to this story. I need to know what you meant." There was a pause on the other end of the line, and for a moment, Emma thought he might not answer. But then he sighed deeply. "It's complicated," he said, "and it's not something I can explain over the phone. Can we meet? Somewhere neutral?" Emma hesitated. She wasn't sure she was ready for what he might tell her, but she also knew she couldn't leave this hanging. "All right," she said finally. "There's a coffee shop on Main Street. Meet me there in an hour." The coffee shop was quiet when Emma arrived, the soft hum of conversation and the clinking of cups providing a soothing backdrop to her nerves. Robert was already there, sitting at a corner table with a coffee in front of him. He stood when he saw her, gesturing to the seat across from him. "Thank you for coming," he said as she sat down. "Let's just get to it," Emma said, crossing her arms. What aren't you telling me? Robert took a sip of his coffee, then leaned forward, his expression serious. Do you know why Marcus and Lily were placed into foster care? He asked. Emma frowned. I know their mother passed away, and their father wasn't in the picture, she said. The agency didn't give me many details, just that there was no one else to take them in. Robert nodded slowly. That's true, to an extent. But there's more to it than that. My sister, Marcus and Lily's mom, she was a wonderful person, but she had her struggles. She got involved with people she shouldn't have, people who took advantage of her. She was trying to get out, to make a better life for her kids, but it wasn't that simple. Emma's heart sank as she listened. She had always known there were pieces of Marcus and Lily's past that were painful, but hearing it spelled out like this made it feel so much more real. What do you mean by people? She asked carefully. Robert hesitated, his eyes flicking around the room as if checking for eavesdroppers. There were debts, he said finally. People who didn't take kindly to being owed money. When she couldn't pay, they started making threats. She was scared for herself and for the kids. That's when she came to me for help. Emma felt a chill run down her spine. And what happened? She asked. I tried to help her, Robert said, his voice heavy with regret. I did everything I could, but it wasn't enough. One night, she called me, terrified. She said someone had broken into her apartment, ransacked the place. She thought they might come after her next. The next day, she was gone. Emma's breath caught. Gone, you mean? She was found in her car, Robert said, his voice barely above a whisper. They said it was an accident, but I never believed that, not for a second. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Emma stared at Robert, her mind racing. If what he was saying was true, then Marcus and Lily hadn't just lost their mother. They had been left in the shadow of something far darker and more dangerous. Why didn't you take them in? Emma asked, her voice sharper than she intended. Robert's face fell. I wanted to, he said, but I wasn't in a position to. I had my own problems, my own debts. I thought they'd be safer in the system, away from anything that could come back to them. But when I found out they'd been adopted, I knew I had to make sure they were okay. Emma's head was spinning. This was too much, too fast. She had thought she was giving Marcus and Lily a fresh start, a chance to leave their pain behind. But now it seemed like their past was still very much a part of their present, and if Robert was right, it could even be a threat to their future. What do you expect me to do with this information? Emma asked, her voice shaking. Robert looked at her with a mix of desperation and determination. I don't know, he admitted, but I thought you deserved to know the truth, and if there's any way I can help, I will. I just want to make things right. Emma stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. She needed air, needed to think. I need time, she said, grabbing her bag. I'll let you know if I decide anything. Robert nodded, but Emma barely saw him as she walked out of the coffee shop, her thoughts a whirlwind of fear and uncertainty. Whatever had happened to Marcus and Lily's mother, it wasn't over. And now, Emma was caught in the middle of a story far bigger than she had ever imagined. Emma couldn't shake the weight of Robert's words as she drove home. The revelation about Marcus and Lily's past felt like a storm cloud hanging over her, growing darker with each passing moment. Every glance at the rearview mirror brought a fresh wave of paranoia. Was someone following her? Were they already watching the kids? She shook her head, trying to push the thoughts away. She couldn't let fear control her. But deep down, she knew things were far from normal. When she arrived home, Marcus and Lily were in the living room, playing quietly. Marcus had taken out his favorite puzzle, but his concentration seemed forced, and his brow was furrowed. Lily, ever the sensitive one, was trying to cheer him up by making silly faces with her stuffed bear. Emma's heart clenched. They were so young, so innocent. The idea that anyone could want to harm them made her stomach churn. How was school today? Emma asked, kneeling down to their level, trying to sound cheerful. It was okay, Lily chirped, but Marcus stayed silent, still staring at the puzzle pieces in front of him. Emma reached out and gently touched his shoulder. "Marcus, sweetie, is everything all right?" she asked softly. He hesitated, then looked up at her with serious eyes. "Is that man coming back?" he asked, his voice barely above a whisper. Emma's chest tightened. She had been so focused on her own unease that she hadn't stopped to consider how Robert's visit might have affected the kids. "I don't know," she admitted. "But if he does, it will only be if you're okay with it. I promise." Marcus nodded, but the worry didn't leave his face. "He said he knew Mommy," he said quietly. "Do you think he's telling the truth?" Emma hesitated. She didn't want to lie to him, but she also didn't want to burden him with the full weight of the truth. Not yet. "I think he might be," she said carefully. "But that doesn't change anything. You and Lily are safe here with me, and that's what matters most." Marcus seemed to accept her answer, but Emma could tell he was still processing everything. She spent the rest of the evening trying to distract the kids with games and stories, but her own mind remained restless. After they were tucked into bed, she sat in the living room, staring at the phone in her hand. Should she call Robert again? Should she dig deeper into his claims? Or was it safer to leave the past buried? Her thoughts were interrupted by the sound of a car pulling up outside. Emma's heart skipped a beat. She wasn't expecting anyone. She peeked through the curtains and saw a dark sedan idling at the curb. The windows were tinted, making it impossible to see who was inside. Emma's pulse quickened. Was it Robert? Or someone else entirely? She stood frozen for what felt like an eternity, watching as the car remained parked, its engine humming softly. Finally, the driver's side door opened, and a man stepped out. It wasn't Robert. This man was taller, broader, and dressed in a dark jacket that seemed almost too formal for the late hour. He looked up at the house, his face partially obscured by the shadows. Emma's first instinct was to grab her phone and call the police, but then she remembered the kids sleeping upstairs. She didn't want to panic them unless it was absolutely necessary. Taking a deep breath, she opened the door just enough to call out, her voice firm but cautious. "Can I help you?" The man turned toward her, his face becoming clearer in the dim light. He didn't look angry or threatening, but there was an intensity in his gaze that made Emma's stomach tighten. "Are you Emma Taylor?" he asked, his voice calm but direct. Emma's grip on the door tightened. "Who's asking?" she replied, trying to sound braver than she felt. "I'm Detective Harris," the man said, pulling a badge from his jacket pocket. "I need to talk to you about Robert Harper." The mention of Robert's name sent a fresh wave of anxiety through Emma. She stepped outside, closing the door behind her to keep the kids from hearing. "What about him?" she asked. The detective's expression was serious. "He's been under investigation for some time," he said. "We believe he may be involved with the same people who are connected to Marcus and Lily's mother. I understand he's been in contact with you." Emma's head spun. "He told me he was their uncle," she said, "that he was trying to help them." Detective Harris nodded grimly. "That's what he wants you to believe," he said. "But we have reason to believe he may be trying to use their connection to cover his tracks. It's possible he's trying to make amends, but we can't ignore the risk he poses. I need you to be extremely careful." Emma felt like the ground had been pulled out from under her. Nothing about this situation made sense anymore. "What should I do?" she asked, her voice trembling. "For now, just keep your distance from him," the detective said. "And if he contacts you again, call us immediately. We'll do everything we can to ensure your safety and the kids' safety." Emma nodded, her mind racing. As the detective returned to his car and drove away, she stood in the doorway, feeling more alone than ever. She had trusted Robert, at least enough to hear him out, and now she was left questioning everything he had told her. Who was he really? And what did he truly want with Marcus and Lily? That night, sleep was impossible. Every sound seemed amplified, every shadow in the house a potential threat. Emma sat by the kids' bedroom doors, keeping watch like a sentinel. Her protective instincts were stronger than ever, but so was her fear. She couldn't shake the feeling that they were being drawn into something far bigger and far more dangerous than she could handle on her own. The next morning, Emma woke up on the couch, her neck stiff from the awkward position she'd fallen asleep in. She had stayed up nearly all night, listening for any sound that might signal trouble. But the house had been quiet, too quiet. The detective's warning echoed in her mind, and her first instinct was to check on the kids. She tiptoed upstairs and found Marcus and Lily still sound asleep, their faces peaceful, blissfully unaware of the storm brewing around them. For a moment, Emma felt a sense of calm, but it didn't last. As she walked back down the hallway, her phone buzzed on the table. The sound startled her more than it should have, and she quickly grabbed it, half expecting another call from the detective. But it wasn't. Instead, it was a text from an unknown number. "Meet me at the park by the lake. Noon, it's about the kids. Don't tell anyone." Emma stared at the message, her stomach churning. Her immediate thought was Robert. It had to be. But how had he gotten her number? And why the cryptic tone? Every instinct told her to ignore the text, to call the detective and let him handle it. But the part of her that had spent every waking moment worrying about Marcus and Lily couldn't shake the possibility that this was important. What if Robert had more answers? Answers the detective didn't have. The morning passed in a blur as Emma went through the motions of getting the kids ready for school. She forced herself to smile as she kissed them goodbye, but her mind was elsewhere. After they were safely dropped off, Emma sat in her car in the school parking lot, gripping the steering wheel. Should she go to the park? Should she take the risk? By the time the clock struck noon, Emma found herself standing by the lake, her heart pounding. The park was quiet, the winter air crisp and cold. She scanned the area, searching for Robert, or whoever had sent the message. She didn't have to wait long. A figure emerged from behind the trees, walking toward her with deliberate steps. But it wasn't Robert. It was a woman. Emma tensed as the woman approached. She was in her early 40s, with sharp features and a no-nonsense demeanor. Her dark coat and scarf made her look even more imposing. Emma felt a wave of unease. "Who are you?" she asked, her voice firm despite the nerves bubbling inside her. The woman stopped a few feet away, her expression unreadable. "My name is Veronica," she said. "I work with people who are interested in the same case you're caught up in, Robert's case. But I'm not here to hurt you, and I'm not with the police." Emma's mind raced. Who was this woman, and what did she want? "If you're not with the police, then why are you here?" she asked. "And how do you know about me?" Veronica sighed, as if bracing herself for a difficult conversation. "Because you're in the middle of something you don't understand," she said. "Something dangerous. And if you don't act soon, it's not just you who'll get hurt, it's the kids." The mention of Marcus and Lily sent a chill down Emma's spine. "What do you mean?" she demanded. "What's going on?" Veronica took a step closer, lowering her voice. "Robert isn't who you think he is," she said. "Yes, he's their uncle, but he's also been working for the same people who threatened their mother. He owes them money, lots of it, and now they're starting to call in their debts. He's desperate, and desperate people do desperate things." Emma's chest tightened. "Why would he come to me then?" she asked. "Why would he put himself in danger by trying to see the kids?" "Because he thinks they're his way out," Veronica said bluntly. "The people he's involved with, let's just say they're interested in unfinished business. Marcus and Lily's mother left something behind, something they want. Robert thinks he can use the kids to find it." Emma felt like the ground was slipping out from under her. She wanted to believe Veronica was lying, that this was all some horrible misunderstanding. But deep down, she couldn't ignore the sinking feeling that everything Veronica was saying made sense. "What did their mother leave behind?" Emma asked, her voice trembling. "What do they want?" Veronica hesitated, her eyes scanning the park as if making sure no one was watching. "I don't know exactly," she admitted. "But whatever it is, it's valuable enough for these people to still be chasing it years later. And if they think Robert can lead them to it, they won't stop until they get what they're after." Emma felt a wave of nausea. She had brought Marcus and Lily into her home to give them a safe, loving environment, a chance to heal. But now it felt like she had unwittingly placed them in even greater danger. "What am I supposed to do?" she asked, her voice breaking. "How do I protect them?" Veronica's expression softened, but her tone remained serious. "Keep them close," she said. "Don't let them out of your sight. And if Robert tries to contact you again, don't meet him. Call me instead." She handed Emma a business card with only a phone number printed on it. No name, no address, just a number. Emma stared at it, her hands trembling. "Why are you helping me?" she asked, looking up at Veronica. "Because I believe those kids deserve a chance," Veronica said simply. "And because I know what these people are capable of." With that, Veronica turned and walked away, leaving Emma standing by the lake, the card clutched tightly in her hand. The stakes had never felt higher, and the path forward had never seemed more uncertain. Emma knew one thing for sure. Whatever was coming next, she couldn't afford to let her guard down. Not for a second. Emma spent the next 2 days in a state of constant vigilance. Every sound, every shadow seemed like a potential threat. Marcus and Lily, sensing her tension, stayed close to her, their usual playful energy subdued. Emma tried to keep things normal for their sake, but the weight of everything she'd learned was unbearable. She kept the business card Veronica had given her in her pocket at all times, her lifeline in case things took a turn for the worse. On the 3rd day, Robert called. The number was blocked, but Emma knew it was him before she even answered. "Emma," he said, his voice low and hurried, "we need to talk. In person." Her grip on the phone tightened. "Robert, I can't," she said firmly. "You need to stay away from us." "You don't understand," he said, desperation creeping into his tone. "They're coming for me, Emma. And if they think I can't deliver, they'll come for the kids next. Please, just meet me. I'll explain everything." Emma hesitated, her heart pounding. Part of her wanted to hang up and call Veronica immediately. But another part of her, the part that still wanted to believe Robert could be trusted, felt compelled to hear him out. Against her better judgment, she agreed to meet him at a diner on the edge of town. She left Marcus and Lily with her trusted neighbor, making sure they were safe before she headed out. When Emma arrived at the diner, Robert was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a baseball cap pulled low over his face. He looked tired, worn down, like a man on the edge of collapse. Emma slid into the seat across from him, her arms crossed tightly. "This better be good," she said, her voice cold. Robert leaned forward, glancing around nervously. "I didn't know what I was getting into," he began. "When Marcus and Lily's mother got involved with these people, I tried to help her. But I was in over my head. I borrowed money from them to get her out of trouble, and when she disappeared, they came after me." Emma stared at him, her anger rising. "And now you think you can use her children to pay off your debts," she snapped. "What kind of person does that?" Robert shook his head furiously. "It's not like that," he insisted. "I just thought, maybe they'd leave me alone if I gave them something. I thought I could protect the kids by keeping them close." Before Emma could respond, the bell above the diner door jingled. 2 men in dark suits entered, their eyes scanning the room. Robert's face went pale. "They're here," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "Emma, you need to go. Now." But it was too late. The men had spotted them. They approached the booth, their expressions cold and unyielding. "Robert Harper," one of them said, his voice calm but menacing. "You've been avoiding us." Emma's heart raced as she tried to think of a way out. "I'm just here to talk," Robert stammered, his voice shaking. "I don't have anything yet, but I'm working on it." The second man glanced at Emma, his gaze sharp and calculating. "And who's this?" he asked. "Your backup plan." Emma felt a surge of panic. She needed to protect herself and the kids, but she was out of her depth. Just as she was about to speak, the door burst open again. Veronica strode in, her presence commanding. "That's enough," she said, her voice firm and authoritative. The men turned toward her, their expressions shifting to a mix of recognition and annoyance. "You don't want to get involved, Veronica," one of them warned. "Oh, I already am," she said, pulling out her phone. "And unless you want every dirty deal you've ever made to go public, you'll leave them alone." The men hesitated, clearly weighing their options. After a tense moment, they stepped back. "This isn't over," one of them said, glaring at Robert. Then they turned and left, the doors slamming shut behind them. Emma let out a shaky breath, her hands trembling. "What just happened?" she asked, looking at Veronica. Veronica gave her a small, reassuring smile. "Let's just say I have my own way of dealing with people like them," she said. Then she turned to Robert. "As for you, this is your last chance. If you so much as think about contacting Emma or the kids again, you'll regret it. Understood?" Robert nodded quickly, his face pale. He muttered an apology to Emma before hurrying out of the diner. For the first time in days, Emma felt a flicker of hope. Maybe, just maybe, this nightmare was finally over. But as she drove home, Emma couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to Veronica's involvement than she was letting on. Later that evening, after the kids were asleep, Emma's phone buzzed. It was a text from an unknown number, but she recognized the style of the message immediately. "You did good today. Keep them safe. But remember, not everyone is who they seem. V." Emma stared at the screen, her heart pounding. She didn't know whether to feel relieved or more afraid than ever. For now, Marcus and Lily were safe. But deep down, she knew this was just the beginning of something much bigger. Something she still didn't fully understand, and the thought of it kept her awake long into the night. Emma sat in the dimly lit living room, the only sound coming from the soft hum of the heater as it worked to keep the chill at bay. She stared at the text on her phone, reading Veronica's message over and over again. Not everyone is who they seem. The words lingered in her mind, heavy with implication. She had hoped for closure, but instead, she was left with a lingering unease. Yet, for the first time in weeks, the house felt calm. Marcus and Lily were sound asleep upstairs, and the immediate threat seemed to have passed. It wasn't over, not entirely, but Emma allowed herself to breathe for a moment, to let go of the tension she'd been holding. The next morning, Emma woke up to the sound of laughter. She walked into the kitchen to find Marcus and Lily sitting at the table, eating cereal and giggling over some shared joke. The sight warmed her heart. For all the chaos and danger of the past weeks, these two children were still just kids, resilient, full of life, and hopeful in ways that reminded Emma why she had taken them in. She poured herself a cup of coffee and joined them, savoring the simple, quiet moment. Over the next few days, life began to settle into a rhythm. Emma stayed vigilant, but she also tried to let herself and the kids enjoy the small joys of daily life. They went to the park, played board games in the evenings, and decorated the house with paper snowflakes for the winter season. Emma found herself marveling at how quickly Marcus and Lily had adapted, how much they seemed to trust her despite everything they had been through. It wasn't just about providing them a home anymore. It was about creating a family, one day at a time. But questions still lingered in Emma's mind. She couldn't shake the feeling that Veronica's warning was more than just a passing caution. Who was Veronica, really? And why had she taken such a personal interest in helping them? Emma decided to call the number on the card Veronica had given her, not because she wanted to reopen the drama, but because she needed answers. She needed to understand what they were truly up against. When Veronica answered, her voice was calm and composed, as always. Emma explained her concerns, her need for clarity, and to her surprise, Veronica agreed to meet her. They decided on a small cafe downtown, a neutral space where Emma felt safe. When Veronica arrived, she looked more relaxed than she had during their previous encounters. There was no tension in her shoulders, no glances over her shoulder. She ordered a cup of tea, sat down, and waited for Emma to speak. "I just need to know the truth," Emma began. "You helped us, and I'll always be grateful for that. But I feel like there's more you're not telling me. Why are you so invested in this? Who are you, really?" Veronica sipped her tea before responding. It's a fair question, she said, and you deserve an honest answer. I used to work for the kind of people who threatened Robert. Let's just say I've seen what they're capable of, and I spent the last few years trying to undo some of the damage I helped create. When I heard about Marcus and Lily's situation, I couldn't walk away. I knew I had to do something. Emma listened carefully, her emotions a mix of gratitude and wariness. So, you're what? Some kind of vigilante, she asked, half joking. Veronica smiled faintly. Something like that, she admitted. I can't change the past, but I can try to make a difference now. And those kids, they've been through enough. They deserve to grow up without looking over their shoulders. Emma nodded, the weight of Veronica's words sinking in. What happens now? She asked. Are we really safe? As safe as you can be, Veronica said. The people after Robert have bigger problems to deal with now. They won't waste their time chasing ghosts. But that doesn't mean you should let your guard down completely. Keep being smart. Keep the kids close. Emma left the cafe feeling a strange mix of relief and uncertainty. She believed Veronica's intentions were genuine, but she also knew that life rarely offered guarantees. Still, she resolved to focus on what she could control, giving Marcus and Lily the love and stability they needed to heal and thrive. The months that followed were a time of rebuilding. Marcus and Lily started to open up more, sharing stories about their mother, their favorite memories, and even some of their fears. Emma listened without judgment, offering comfort and reassurance whenever they needed it. Slowly but surely, they began to trust that this new life wasn't temporary, that they were finally safe. One evening, as Emma tucked Lily into bed, the little girl looked up at her with wide, curious eyes. Do you think Mama would be proud of us? She asked softly. Emma felt her throat tighten. She leaned down and kissed Lily's forehead. I know she would be, she said. She loved you so much, and she'd be so proud of how brave and strong you are. Lily smiled and closed her eyes, her tiny hand clutching Emma's as she drifted off to sleep. In that moment, Emma realized that the past couldn't be erased, but it didn't have to define their future. They were building something new, something beautiful, and that was what mattered most. As the seasons changed, Emma began to feel a sense of peace she hadn't thought possible. The house was filled with laughter and warmth, and the shadows of the past seemed to grow fainter with each passing day. Every now and then, she thought about Veronica and the role she had played in their journey. Emma never saw her again, but she kept the business card tucked away in a drawer, a quiet reminder of the woman who had stepped in when they needed help the most. The final twist came one sunny afternoon when Emma received an envelope in the mail. It had no return address, but inside was a simple note: You're stronger than you think. Keep going. V. Along with the note was a photo of Marcus and Lily's mother, smiling with her children in a park. Emma stared at the photo, tears welling up in her eyes. It was a gift she hadn't expected, a piece of the children's past that they could hold onto as they moved forward. That night, Emma showed the photo to Marcus and Lily. They gazed at it with wide eyes, their faces lighting up with joy and recognition. That's Mama, Marcus said, his voice filled with wonder. Emma wrapped her arms around them, holding them close. She's always with you, she said, and now she's part of our family too. As they sat together, the weight of everything they had been through seemed to lift, replaced by a sense of hope and possibility. Emma knew their journey wasn't over, that life would continue to throw challenges their way. But she also knew they would face those challenges together, as a family, and that was more than enough.